I think there's some in Catholic schools who are maybe embarrassed or ashamed of what the church teaches and believes it teaches.
If we don't have the formation, if we don't have a relationship with Jesus, our students are going to see right through us.
Because I think a lot of our Catholic schools get caught up in the success of academics and the success of athletics, and they kind of forget about that formation side of things.
That's not why Catholic schools operate. We're not training social workers. We're training people who care, though, about others because it's the face of Christ.
Right? And young people are responding to the gospel when we're uncompromising, but we propose it in a way where students know we love them and we respect them, we give them freedom to make their own choices. Good day. Welcome to this special Shalom World News Roundtable discussion with some extraordinary Catholic leaders from around the United States. Joining me today are several leaders who are making a huge impact on shaping missionary disciples in Catholic schools K through 12. And I'd like each of them to introduce themselves before we begin our discussion this morning. Why don't we start to my left?
I'm Bishop Tom Daly from the Diocese of Spokane, Washington, Eastern Washington. Prior to being bishop, I spent almost 20 years as a teacher and a president of Marin Catholic, which was one of the diocesan schools in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. I finished as chair of Catholic education for the Bishops' Conference last November, and I still serve as a member of that committee.
Andy? Andy Tylicki. I'm the president at St. James Academy in Lenexa, Kansas, and I've been the president here for about 16 years. Excellent.
And I'm Sister Bridget Martin. I'm the principal at the High School of St. Thomas More in Champaign, Illinois. I've been in Catholic education for about 16 years, starting at St. James Academy as a teacher, and I've been the principal now for 7 years at the high school in Champaign.
And you are a sister of?
I'm a sister of St. Francis of the Martyr St. George, based out of Alton, Illinois.
Excellent, excellent. And in addition to my role with Shalom World News, my name is Pat Reidy, and I am the Vice President of Mission and Faith at J. Sarah Catholic High School in Orange County, Southern California. Well, we want to have a discussion about the impact of Catholic education and the renewal that's taking place in the United States. And each of you have been at the front of that renewal. Bishop, I want to start with you. When we think about 2025, what's going on in Catholic education here in the United States, how would you define what a strong Catholic identity looks like in a Catholic K through 12 school?
I think it begins with leadership that not only practice but believe the mission of the church. As a bishop, I see my responsibilities making sure if it's an elementary school that the pastors are men who believe that they are shepherds not only of the whole parish community but especially the school community. They support the principal. The expectation working with the director of Catholic education is that the principals be men and women of faith who know what it is to give witness and to model. And I think that is the starting point. The longer I'm in Catholic education, I realize a school cannot be truly Catholic if the leadership which set the vision given to them by the church are the ones who lead the faculty and the school community. So a community that has that strong leadership of faith-filled, believing Catholics, knowing that the context in which we find ourselves today is increasingly secular, but yet we can't ever forget that the Lord is in charge and that he will always provide individuals who help in this mission. So if I summarize it, it's leadership as the starting point, and then I believe things follow that. But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work.
Not every person who works at a Catholic school, not every family that attends a Catholic school necessarily has that Catholic outlook, correct? How does leadership ensure that the school remains faithful to this identity, its Catholicity, if you will, when we're dealing with an ecumenical group of people?
Sure. From my own experience, you want people, if they are not Catholic, to respect and value the mission. That's why they're choosing to send their sons and daughters there. Faculty members who may not always be Catholic must respect and show that, because young people see whether we are authentic in what we're doing. So we realize that it's a pluralistic environment we're in. We realize that we've had really 2 to 3 generations that have not always understood. We've had schools that have compromised their mission, that may be Catholic in name only. So the environment's going to be challenging, but we look for that, again, that fundamental word of respect for the mission. If you want us to be a part of us, then this is who we are. You have to be clear in that. And so I found some of the greatest families and individuals in a school may not necessarily be Catholic, but they respect that mission. I also think it's important that the school realize that much like the early church, there's going to be those who question, who struggle. And so we have to be patient as Christ was, and know that part of a Catholic school environment is to allow young people to search and to question. There's a phrase from the Eucharistic prayer, the fourth Eucharistic prayer, that I think really should guide all Catholic schools about young people. All who seek you with a sincere heart, and all those whose faith is known to you alone. I think that places a context of operating the Catholic school, knowing the complexity of the culture, but also clarity that comes from fidelity to its mission.
Andy, I want to ask you a question, given your role as president at St. James Academy. Sometimes in Catholic schools, there's a desire, even on the part of students and often staff, to compartmentalize the Catholicism. Mm-hmm. So in other words, well, if you're teaching religion, you're teaching theology, that's where the Catholicism happens. And if you happen to have a mass once in a while, that's where you think about being Catholic, but that should be it. You served as an athletic director prior to being president. How important is it that the Catholic mission of the school penetrate every aspect of the culture?
Well, I think it's imperative that happens. And I think from the very beginning of our school, we were handed this mission in 2005 to pass on the Catholic faith to the next generation. And it started, I remember one of my first board meetings as athletic director, I had a board member ask me, how are you going to bring the faith to the field? And I was not sure how to answer that question at that time. But you have to be very purposeful. And like Bishop Daly said, I mean, you have to be very clear in what your mission is. And when you're hiring people, that's the most important piece. In particular, coaches have such an impact on young people. And I would say, that within our school, at least, our football coach may be the best evangelizer on the campus. And that's so important. He has 155 athletes out there on the field. And he is bringing the word of Christ to every kid every day in practice. And has had just this incredible impact on our campus. So making sure that, and we always kind of talk about it, as Bishop Bailey just said, I mean, the importance of explaining the mission and be very clear about what you want to be. Christ is at the heart of everything that we do. And then the successes of anything kind of branch off from that relationship. And that's where it all starts, with that relationship. And it's imperative in every classroom, and having the leadership, as Bishop Bailey was saying, and having a principal that has a vision for Catholic education and what it should look like in every classroom, and bringing the faith into science classrooms, into math classrooms, into English is imperative to the success of the school.
So that's a good segue to another question, and I'm going to turn to you, Sister Bridget, which is, in order to do that, you really need teachers who, at least at some level, have a formation in the faith, right? If I'm a science or math teacher and I want to imbue my classroom with Catholic principles, I need to know something. I need to have some relationship with Christ, even more than just intellectual knowledge. That word formation means something different depending on who you're asking.
Sure does, yeah.
So how do you strike this balance with staff in your school who are well-formed, and staff, as Bishop Daly was referring to, maybe staff who are coming on and haven't had the same exposure to the faith as others? How do you go about that type of formation in a Catholic school?
So we do a full staff formation and kind of just start with the assumption that we don't know anything. And our chaplain helps to lead that. And when I became principal, I had actually asked that we could begin having as many spiritual development days as we are professional development days, because that's why we're there. If we're only doing the professional development, you can get paid a lot more at public schools and not have to wear as many hats or anything like that in a public school, possibly. And so when I started doing that, I had a little bit of pushback because the teachers, some of them said, this isn't what we're here for. And I had to help them understand this is exactly what you're here for. If we don't have the formation, if we don't have a relationship with Jesus, our students are going to see right through us. Sure, we might start class with a short prayer. We might have a student lead a prayer. But if our actions aren't living out that faith, the students are going to see right through that, especially in a high school. They see right through us. And so now, a number of years into it, the staff expects that and they look forward to that. And when I hire a new staff, I'm always, yes, I want to know about your knowledge of the content, but I would also like to know where you are in your faith life. And just because you don't necessarily have a faith life doesn't mean that I won't hire you, but you've got to be open to, as Daly was saying, you've got to be open to understanding the faith. Some of my best teachers are not Catholic, but they're very supportive of the Catholic faith and very, very much teaching what the Catholic Church teaches in the arts, in the sciences, things like that. And it's beautiful to see that. I've actually had a conversation with one of my teachers and said something about another teacher being the most Catholic, non-Catholic teacher we have. And that teacher said, wait, she's not Catholic? I had no idea. And that teacher's been teaching there for a number of years. And so
She will be soon.
that's my hope, right? The witness of each other. And so another part of that is helping us to all understand we can't give what we don't have, right? We can't give the content that we don't have, but we also can't give the witness that we aren't living in our own lives. And we incorporate that in our house system as well, because I ask my teachers to have some pretty open conversations with their students in house about their own faith journey. And that's really uncomfortable, and that's okay. Pope Benedict said we weren't made for comfort, we were made for greatness. And so let's get uncomfortable. Let's talk about the things that maybe in teacher school they don't prepare you how to talk about, but in the school of life and in our goal for eternity is the most important. And so I do also try to, when I create some small groups in those spiritual development sessions, I work with Father, and we try to pair some of our stronger teachers who have a really good grasp of the faith and are really living it out with some of those teachers who maybe this is the beginning of their journey, because we also know that the witness is going to be so important to each other as well. In education, we talk about being lifelong learners, and that's not just in our craft, but also hopefully in our hearts as well.
What you're saying really requires both, it seems, sort of an overt search for teachers who are Catholic, right? I mean, that's what we want in our Catholic schools. We want teachers who are Catholic, but also a bit of patience with those who haven't had a lot of formation. What's the balance between, and I'm going to ask you, what's the balance in there, right, between looking for hires who are really Catholic and are totally on board with what we're doing, and being patient so that the Lord can bring others along and they can discover the beauty that He's calling us to live?
Well, I think that one of the most important things is for them to completely understand who we are as a school and know what our mission and purpose is and who we're going to be. And if they can be a part of that and support that, then they can come in. And it's rather amazing. We do faculty faith formation on a weekly basis as well. And I remember we hired a basketball coach. He's a Catholic guy about 15 years ago, Stan Dom, and he came in and we have to explain to him, here's who we are, here's what we're going to be. And 6 months after he started the job, he's like, I had no idea it was going to be like this. I mean, you said this, but I didn't know it was going to be like this. But it's just really important to bring those people in and be very purposeful about explaining who we are as a school. And again, don't have any problem with having non-Catholics on our staff as long as they're supporting the mission. And they need to be a witness to the relationship with Christ as well. They can't just sit on the sidelines and not be a part of that conversation. And being a school of witness is very important, as Sister was speaking to. It's important to be able to share your love of Jesus to your students, regardless of whether you're Catholic or non-Catholic. And that's an important piece.
Bishop, I want to turn back to you. It seems as though a lot of people listening might be saying, well, this is really good, but my school's not really that Catholic. And some of us have had an experience of that. How do you begin to turn that ship and point it in the right direction if you're a school that's 10, 20, 30, 70 years old and you haven't really had your Catholicity on target?
I think one of the, whether my time as a Marin Catholic or my time as a bishop and then on the committee, I felt that one of the potential drawbacks of diocesan schools are spiritual mediocrity. One of the drawbacks of religious order schools or private schools might be a parallel church where they don't see themselves as part of the ecclesiastical entity, which is the church. So it is true. We have schools that the religious left, especially here in the Northwest. And there was also a mindset, and it's not just the Northwest, it was parts of the rest of the country where the bishops and some of the priests said, okay, well, schools, that was part of the 50s church, it's over now. And So you have schools that continue to operate, but no one's addressed it with the intention and the necessary direction. And sadly, that's present. And so how then do you turn that around? Well, again, it goes back to what is the role of the bishop? Does he place priority of Catholic education as in his top three? That's, for me, it is. And because what flows from that, of course, ultimately is the salvation of souls, which is why we have schools and hospitals and parishes and social service agencies, the why behind what we do. So a school that needs to be redirected is going to have to seriously see, why are we doing this? Well, for the let the children come to me and do not hinder them, the salvation of souls. And so sadly, you have to have that direction from the top, where the bishop, the pastor. Remember being in a conversation and a priest who had a leadership position said, well, schools, parents want it, they keep open. If not, then we close them. And that's not the approach. I think it's the direction has to be set, because the bishop's role is to teach, govern, and sanctify. And so that then should filter down into the schools. So it becomes leadership, but also a parent community. You have some parents, sometimes they've said, well, why don't we take the Catholic identity away from this school? Sadly, you're going to have a segment of the population. It doesn't matter. As long as their kid gets into a college, that's all that matters. How that came to be is probably what I would call institutional cultural Catholicism. Well, I sent my kids to Catholic school. Well, did it help them to become a better Catholic? Did it help them see the importance of Mass and the sacraments? What was it? Well, no, they were agents of social change. That's not why Catholic schools operate. We're not training social workers. We're training people who care, though, about others, because it's the face of Christ. So I think it's recognizing the problem. Then you have to, again, I keep stressing leadership who now begins to lead. And then I believe, and I don't think from my experience, God will give you 2 or 3 who will help you move forward on that. And it takes patience, and it takes charity, but it takes trust. And I think had I a longer term as chair, I think I would have addressed some of those specific areas of schools that are basically Catholic in name only, because the diocese, the parish, the order, really back to what I said, don't really believe that this is a work of Christ about the salvation of souls. I used to say at Marin Catholic, our job is to get your kid into heaven, but we better get them into a good college first. And that, I think, is, and it's not either or. I think sometimes also one last thing is, I think there's some in Catholic schools who are maybe embarrassed or ashamed of what the church teaches and believes it teaches. And you can't have that. Now, you can blast them, what I call shotgun blast Catholicism. That will not work, because Christ himself always proposed, he didn't impose, but he was clear. And you could follow him if you wanted to be a disciple, or if you're a mere admirer, you walked. And so I think we look at that interaction of Jesus with the rich young man. Jesus loved him, which means he wanted what was best. He respected his freedom, but Jesus did not compromise. And I think you cannot compromise, and that's happened too often, and that has to be corrected before school goes in the right direction.
So the 4 of us are here together because we all agree that Catholic schools, especially where we see ourselves planted by God, are the best chance the church has at re-evangelizing not only the culture, but the church, right? I mean, we're on the front lines. We've got students who are captive every day. And so we have this chance to invite and propose on a regular basis. And we've all seen the fruit of that in our individual schools. I'd love it if each of you can share with our audience one anecdote you have that demonstrates the transformative power of this type of Catholic education that we're talking about. Sister, I want to put you on the spot.
Oh, gosh.
Can we start with you?
Sure. I think of 7 years ago when I was asked to be the principal. I didn't have a background in that. I had just finished my master's in catechetics and evangelization. And when the superintendent called me and asked me if I would be the next principal, I said, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to balance budgets. I've taken a vow of poverty. I've never had to think about things like that. And she said, I can help you with that. But I said, my master's is in catechetics and evangelization. She said, I think that's exactly what that school needs. So when I became principal and started putting our Catholic identity as our first and foremost, in everything that we did, there was a fallout. We lost enrollment. I had to hire about half of my staff that first summer. And it was really hard. And it was a fight against the culture. 7 years later, though, in holding tight to not compromising on the Catholic identity piece of our school, I'm happy to say we finally leveled out our enrollment. We're starting to see some growth. We're starting to see some momentum being picked up. We shifted this year to a president-principal model in order to help with the leadership of the school, and just being able to be the witness to my staff, to the students, but also to see the relationships that are being formed and the reasons students are now coming to our school. Yes, we're getting them ready for some really great colleges. Last year we had 2 go off to Notre Dame and 1 to full ride to the Naval Academy and 2 to seminary. I'm just like, praise God, like there's some really great things happening. So I think our community is seeing that we are doing the college ready piece or whatever the next step is, but we're also, and more importantly, getting them ready for eternity. And I think that just our focus on Catholic identity has to be as hard moments even then. And so it's, I think when we do put our trust in the Lord and when we do really fully grasp on to why we were founded as a Catholic school, or even just as a Catholic church, what our role is, when we hold fast to that, we'll see, not only will we see those worldly markers being met, but more importantly, we're going to see the ones that really matter. We're going to see students coming to know Jesus. We're going to see teachers coming to know him in a more profound way. Hopefully coming into the church and understanding too what that means and their role in society as they leave us, because we have them for very short years, but hopefully they're better Christians and better people because of that.
When they leave our schools.
Yeah. They're saints in the making. And, hopefully we're helping to that process along.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank you, Sister Andy. Sister, little line in there, you said 2 seminarians in your class this year, right? You were just telling me beforehand that
it's the
first time
in our school's history.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Pat, I think just watching students leave our school and changing the culture of other places, including public universities. We have a strong tie to Benedictine College where we send a number of students to Benedictine. But just watching students over a 4-year period of time and their formation on a daily basis. And we were able to experience last night Draw Near, which is a monthly adoration that is a student-led, student-run adoration. We were all together last night in that, and it's just a beautiful place to be with young people. And we are seeing the transformation of hearts through the 4 years that they're here. And I have great hope for the future of our church based off of the students that are leaving our schools right now. And we're seeing vocations come out of our school, but we're seeing, I think since St. James opened in 2005, I think we're close to 75 sacramental weddings that have occurred with couples that have met at our school. I think I might be exaggerating that number a little bit, but there's a number of young people that are living their faith as married couples that met at St. James Academy. And I was just with a young man last week that graduated in our first class. And if you would have told me while he was in high school that he would be living a life of sacramental life with his wife and with his young children, I would have been like, maybe not. But he is doing that. So I have great hope in this young generation of Catholics right now that I think are going to change the church and change the world.
That's great. Bishop, just a combination of what has been said, I would say where I've seen the transformation might be the lay administration and the priest chaplain and the Dominican Sisters of Ann Arbor at Marin Catholic, who with adoration and a commitment to the faith that is giving young people a sense of their dignity. We knew that we survived the last 5 years of all these state-run endeavors like DIA, what are we calling? I'm getting confused now.
DEI?
DEI, yes. DEI. So, so I had to tell there is no place of that discrimination because we're beloved sons and daughters of God and created in God's image and likeness. So to have young people experience that And I've seen that in the challenges, of course, in life in California with so much of the secularism, to see young people believe that and then take that, as you're saying, in college and beyond. I'd say just locally, my own diocese, DeSales, is one of the oldest Catholic schools in the West. It goes back to really the 1860s. Small school, but I assigned a priest in as president, sent him off to school, a great lay principal, John Lesko, who was a graduate, and to see that school producing vocations, a school of 100, high school, and had 3 men in the summit. And so there works, but more importantly, when young people would want a sacramental marriage, they don't want to get married in a treehouse on a niche. They say, Father, Bishop, will you do it? Or former students that I've had, and baptisms of their children. So the sacramental life lived in a community of faith we call the church, because the isolationism and the sense of I can do this on my own, I'm spiritual, not religious, to have this generation, I think, who have been formed in Catholic schools say, no, that's not enough. I need this church. I need to be a part of it, and I need to respond to that gift of faith. That I've seen occurred, and that is very hopeful. It's hopeful.
And maybe I'll just add something from my own school to give a shout out to J. Sarah Catholic High School in Orange County. We're, unlike some of the other schools, we're only about 55% Catholic. So it's a real mission field. And our challenge, as some of you have mentioned, is being uncompromisingly Catholic without making it feel like we're shoving it down people's throats. And that's a real art. And we're never perfect, but I think we strike the balance most of the time. And now, after 10, 12 years of really trying to lean into our Catholic identity, we're seeing the fruit, as some of you know. So we've baptized about 100 students over the last 4 or 5 years. So last 2 years, we baptized 33 students each year. We've got 53 students in our program for preparation for the sacraments this year. So there is hope, right? And young people are responding to the gospel when we're uncompromising, but we propose it in a way where students know we love them and we respect them. We give them freedom to make their own choices. As John Paul II used to always say, I always heard after confessions, he'd say, you must choose, right? And he'd do that with great love. As we wrap up here, maybe we can issue a word of invitation or challenge to those listening who might be in schools, asking themselves how they can really maybe recreate some of what they're hearing, what's going on in the renewal that we're experiencing that's so exciting, that's giving us hope for the future of the church. What's a word of invitation that we can give? Sister, can you
Sure. I was thinking
encourage our listeners and viewers?
When Bishop Daly was speaking earlier, the necessity to speak the truth in charity. We can't lambaste them, right? But we can speak the truth in charity and not back down on that, because then people will come to know that we love the church, but we love them as well. And we are just inviting them into that relationship that we already have. So speaking in the truth in charity is very appealing. So I think if no matter where we are in our schools, even if I am seems like I'm the only teacher in the school who really cares about the Catholic identity of my school, if I'm speaking the truth in charity to my administrators, to my co-teachers, to my students, there will be a difference made. We might not see it, but it could be the difference of a soul.
Thanks, sister.
I just believe there are people all over this country that have the greatest desire to have great Catholic education, and they want to share that with each other. Pat, you and I met 15 years ago because of that, our desire to have great Catholic schools and to look at missionary disciples on a daily basis on our campuses, and how do we create evangelizers for the faith. Bishop Daly has been to our conference for, I don't know, last few years, yeah, because he has a great desire to bring Catholic identity to Washington and to really to all of us, to inspire all of us to want to be a part of that. So don't lose hope. If you're isolated in a place, there are people that want to help across this country, and I think there's great Catholic educators everywhere, and they want to be a part of it. And we love athletics, but we won our first state football title a few years ago, and it was one of the greatest days we had. It was a blast, but it's not our purpose. It's not what we're about. And I think that's an important piece, because I think a lot of our Catholic schools get caught up in the success of academics and the success of athletics. They kind of forget about that formation side of things. And I would just encourage people to really look inside and make sure that's something they're looking at.
Thanks, Andy. Alicia?
I would kind of quote from St. Vincent de Paul. It said, grace is necessary to begin and ever more necessary to persevere to the end. It's perseverance. It's to say it's hard work. But if it's of God, as you're saying about this school, then we'll succeed. And it takes humility. I love to connect humility with gratitude. Humility and gratitude lead to generosity, and that leads to joy and peace. And so we have to be a church, not dour, but a church that has the joy that comes from Christ, but it's realistic. Again, challenging, so persevere, ask for God's grace and Mary's intercession, who always leads us closer to Jesus.
Well, that's a great end note. And I want to thank each of you for being here, for sharing some of your wisdom and experience of the hope we have as Catholic educators. And also thank you for the work you do in your schools, because you wouldn't be here unless you're making the sacrifices day in and day out. And it's not always pretty, but it bears such beautiful fruit for our schools, for our young people, and for the church. So thank you. And I want to thank all of our viewers for joining in today. I hope this has been an inspiring day for you. And as Pope John Paul II said, coraggio, be encouraged, be courageous. Thank you for joining us on this special Shalom World News Roundtable. God bless you.